Hello, my name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of The Journey. And The Journey is um, a show that talks about stories of transformation, talks about what are some of the tips or tools that you can use along your journey of being able to have the life that you desire and how um, you can transform through setbacks or obstacles in your life. There's a couple key things that throughout my life, and especially the last few years, that have been instrumental in helping me in my own journey, as well as working with the clients and the clients that I work with and staff that I work with. And two of those things are the work of Joseph Campbell, specifically regarding the hero's journey, and Ryan Holiday's work regarding Stoicism. And the first book that I read by Holiday was a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And I've referred to that book numerous times. I've taught on the concepts from that book numerous times. And today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you the story that is where the concept of the obstacle is the way came from. And the original story, at least how I looked it up and found it, was called The Obstacle in Our Path. And this was an ancient story. And as many stories that fall into that category of a classic or ancient story, I'm not 100% confident that I know where it came from. And I don't know if that's necessarily all that important. It's really about what can I extract? What can you extract when you are reading or listening to this story? And then how does it apply in your life? So let me go ahead and read them. The obstacle in our path. There once was a very wealthy and curious king. This king had a huge boulder placed in the middle of a road, and then he hid nearby to see if anyone would try to remove the gigantic rock from the road. The first people to pass by were some of the king's wealthiest merchants and courtiers. Rather than moving it, they simply walked around it. A few loudly blamed the king for not maintaining the roads. Not one of them tried to move the boulder. Finally, a peasant came along. His arms were full of vegetables. When he got near the boulder, rather than simply walking around it as others had, the peasant put down his load and tried to move the stone to the side of the road. It took a lot of effort, but he finally succeeded. The peasant gathered up his load and was ready to go on his way when he saw a purse lying in the road where the boulder had been. The peasant opened up the purse. The purse was stuffed full of gold coins and a note from the king. The king's note said that the purse's gold was a reward for moving the boulder from the road. The king showed the peasant what many of us have never understood. Every obstacle presents an opportunity to improve our condition. I have seen and heard variations of this particular story. But I think some of the key themes are the same. One, a king is representing someone of wisdom, of vision, that wants to see who, if anyone, in his kingdom what will they do maybe when no one's watching? What will they do with this particular obstacle that clearly is not supposed to be where it's at in the middle of the road? So he's off to the side watching and seeing what some of the people in the town in his kingdom will do. And as the story illustrates here, is that some of the wealthiest came by and they walked around it, and they made maybe even made derogatory comments about the king not maintaining the roadway. Other versions will talk about people just ignoring it altogether and not making any comments, as if the boulder wasn't there. Others would expect someone else to move the boulder, but it wasn't their responsibility because they didn't put it there. But it's a stranger, at least one of the versions I heard, was that a stranger that was coming in town. This particular story says someone of lower means came by and struggled to remove the boulder. One of the versions I heard of this was that this stranger or this peasant came and pushed an attempt to pull to no avail to move the boulder, but continued to persist. And that some time after continuing to time and time again try to remove the boulder, that and failing at his attempts, in the midst of that struggle, something released, something relaxed, and it was his thinking. And he went into the woods to get a long stick and a smaller rock and used it as a lever and used the leverage instead of just brute force to move the boulder. Now, maybe in itself, that would have been enough of a reward for our stranger or peasant, that he was able to succeed through innovation and creativity, through stilling his mind, recognizing what wasn't working, and stilling his mind, being in that stillness, so that some innovation and creativity came for another way, a different way of being able to move this obstacle. But the king had left a purse full of gold and with a note saying that whoever had removed the boulder would release then the purse, and it rightfully went to that particular individual. Maybe for us, the reward comes with being able to be creative and innovative and persistent to address the boulders in our life, the obstacles in our life. So, how do we take a story like this and apply it to our life? Um, I know for me, there's been more than a handful of different times throughout the last couple of years where I've used this story and the concepts from this story to help me out in business and help me out in my personal life. When I had my accident and 4 years ago, and I ruptured my quadricep tendon, I know that that currently was my obstacle. So I started rereading Holiday's book to give me strength and encouragement during that time period of unknown as well as of rehab and my leg healing and I had to learn how to walk again. Other times in business that I've had to recognize that the obstacles that were now in my path, in the company's path, were opportunities in which to grow and in which to learn. And last year, when the COVID hit and quarantine started happening, started affecting business, I recognized that instead of being scared and fearful that another thing was going to happen, that it was important for me to reframe my thinking, that I had to have a different perspective. The situation hadn't changed at all, but I needed to be different so that I could then somehow be in a space to be a leader with creativity and with some innovation. And at that time, it was about how do I find the opportunity in the chaos? Again, just using the phrases just a little bit different. So, what I would like you to think about is what obstacles have been in your path in your past, and later you come to realize that they were a teacher that wouldn't have occurred, things you wouldn't have learned if that obstacle wouldn't have been there. I imagine you can probably, if you think about it, think of more than a couple examples. And the other thing that I'd like you to do is think about what obstacles are currently in your path and how can they be opportunities for growth and development? As always, I appreciate any type of feedback that you can give me, any thoughts that come up when you listen to this, as well as being able to share this little bit of thought and inspiration and perspective. You never know who may need just a little bit of reframing or a little bit of hope. So you be well and take care of yourself and be kind to others. We'll see you again next week.